So after I posted yesterday's update, I went back and actually watched the previous week's video and this week's video, and I realized that there's like this huge gap missing. There were a couple of video clips that I guess I thought I'd already posted that I hadn't, but we kind of went from a video that said I was having trouble getting things to 3D print to suddenly there was a part on the car and it was getting body worked, filler and primer. So how do we get from the 3D printer to the car? So we'll have a short little video here to talk about that. So here we are on the 3D printer. I guess I'll go into a little bit of what I've got going on. The parts get developed in Fusion 360. That's what I've chosen to do my 3D modeling in. In Fusion 360, I actually use the extrude to cut it up into parts that will fit on the printer, because obviously this printer, even though it's a pretty darn big printer, won't print an entire panel. So it gets cut up into pieces that will fit on here. From there it goes into the slicer where I arrange them and orient them like I want them. I'm printing all the parts in PLA because it's one of the easiest to work with. It's got a lower melting point. It's got some pretty good properties. If I were making panels that I was actually going to leave on the car, if I was trying to make panels that were going to stay on the car in some manner, I would probably print them out of ASA or ABS. But for something that's temporary, just to make a mold off of, I'm using PLA. I found that I get really good adhesion and low warpage if I use a raft. So I use a PETG raft because the PETG won't stick to the PLA. So my raft and any supports I make are printed in PETG with a PLA part. Once they come off the printer, they usually don't require a whole lot of cleanup because I'm using dissimilar plastics for my rafts and my supports. Sometimes I just have to knock a couple of edges off, or a couple of these, you can kind of see little, what people will call boogers there, which is where I really need to optimize my retraction settings. I'm still dialing it in with the new 0.8 nozzles, but I clean them up with just a regular knife. I tried sanding on the last panels, but PLA doesn't sand great, so I just clean them up with a pocket knife, and then I glue them together. And I've heard a lot of people advise using a two-part epoxy for gluing PLA together. And once again, if I was making a permanent part, I probably would. But since I'm just making a temporary part, what I'm actually using is super glue, Starbond brand super glue, along with the Starbond brand accelerator. And combined, this stuff is almost magic. You spray the accelerator on one side, you put the glue on the other, you stick them together. I usually hold them for 45 seconds, and after 45 seconds, they're stuck. And when I was doing the other parts, actually I was doing some trimming on the rail like this, and the parts broke, but they didn't break at a glue line. They actually broke between the layers of the print. Now, some of that was because I was still optimizing the temperature settings for the bigger nozzles, but still the fact that it broke along a print line rather than a super glue line, I think speaks a lot to the super glue. So kind of what I do is I glue each of the faces of this panel together here in the inside, and then I take them out to the garage. And what I typically do is I flip them over on the back side, and I lay a thin fiberglass strip along the seams just to give it a little extra reinforcement while I put it on the car. And then I take the faces and I set them on the car, and I glue the actual different faces together there. So like this piece here glues onto here. I'll put them on the car and glue them together on the car so that I know I've got my tilt and my angles just right, and my alignment side to side just right. So once I get it glued together on the car, then while they're still on the car, I go ahead and lay a single layer of fiberglass over the whole thing to really firm it up, and that way I don't have to worry about any of the glue breaking or cracking when I pull it off the car to start doing heavy body work on it. So It's just a quick video talking about how it gets, I guess, from the computer all the way to the car. Once it gets glued together on the car and gets the fiberglass, then I pull it off the car and put it on the workbench to start doing sanding and filler and primer to get it all looking really nice.